Hello, it's Annette here from CDI Linkit, Clinical Documentation Specialist Services. I have just been attending the HIMAA conference, the Health Information Management Association of Australia conference here in Melbourne for the last 3 days, and it has been absolutely wonderful. I took the opportunity to do a presentation on the professionalisation of clinical documentation specialists, which went over, I think went well. Certainly didn't have any booing in the audience. I mean, admittedly, most of the conference attendees seemingly seemed to be more HIMSS and clinical coders. There was a strong representation from clinical coders, which really did make my heart sing, and so there were CDIs in the audience, but not so much clinician CDSs. But obviously we have the shared problems. It was interesting from the talks that when I was talking about professionalisation of clinical documentation specialists, it really did mirror the professionalisation of the health information managers. So really, where I think HIMSS are much further more advanced than we are, but I think we will be probably shadowing their journey as well. And there was some really great presentations from Queensland, and I know I'm a little bit partial because I'm a Queenslander, but what they were presenting, they're doing such great work in terms of clinical coding workforce and supporting rural, remote and even more regional areas with their workforce issues, and also having a program in place for trainee clinical coders. So once you've done your diploma, and then advancing their traineeship so that they become work ready to be employed as coders. And they were talking about the future workforce requirements in terms of coders, and Queensland alone, they're looking at an additional 30 clinical coders every year. And unfortunately at the moment there's graduates, but organisations of course are they don't have the capacity to train and spend the time and effort. They just don't have the senior clinical coders in order to do that, and that's where this framework has come in really good, and their results seemingly are showing a positive return on investment, so that's pleasing to see. There was some other presentations that I got quite a bit out of it from a CDI point of view. Certainly today was the last day, and leave the best to last. Mike Curtis and Danielle Cornish from CDIA did a 1.5-hour workshop on having effective clinical documentation improvement programs and discussing the challenges and the risk mitigation strategies of how to improve those programs. So it was really good because the room, I think, easily 150 people. I mean, I'm not good at estimating, but I'm sure the room was pretty full. So that was really, really great, and there was a lot of interaction and a lot of engagement from the audience. So well done to Mike and Danielle. It was good because Danielle is a doctor and she was able to give a really good account of the difficulties junior doctors experience and why CDI might somehow get that reaction that they're not interested, that the doctors aren't interested, they're rude, they're just not getting it, and I think Danielle was really able to explain the pressures that they're under, and whilst you don't expect anyone to be rude, but it's just being cognizant of the fact that there's so much pressure on those junior doctors, and perhaps sometimes it's better, to actually go, especially if you're looking for a diagnosis. There is a hesitancy from junior docs to provide a diagnosis in case they're wrong, and so, sometimes in that instance, just gauge where you're better off to go. Is it to the junior doctor, or is it actually to the registrar, or is it to the consultant? And it was really interesting. I think it goes back to the paper that I reviewed a few weeks ago in regards to clinician engagement. It did come up that you really do need to engage with the consultants, or the medical directors, even higher than that, to ensure that your clinicians are supported in their documentation and what we require them to document. So if you have strong leadership, you'll have good behaviour in terms of clinical documentation behaviour. So that was really affirming to hear that from the workshop, and really from that research article that I reviewed a few weeks ago. I will put that video about the research review, I'll put that in the description. The other thing they mentioned or announced, or I don't know what else you would call it, the clinical coding framework that HIMAA have put together. They've done a lot of work for clinical coders, and they've just released it today. Now, there is quite a bit in there in regards to CDI, so even though you're not a clinical coder, I really encourage you to actually read the document. It's quite a lengthy document, but you will be able to search in there and find the specific stuff in regards to CDI. And again, I'll put a link to that in the description as well. What else did I find over the 3 days? Well, the other thing, I got the opportunity to talk. I went to the HIMAA stand, and I actually got the opportunity to talk to Cassie and she's actually on the HIMAA board, I believe. So it was good to have a chat to her, because I mentioned to her that over the past few months I've been umming and ahhing about joining HIMAA, because I really wasn't sure, as a clinician clinical documentation specialist, what I'd actually get out of it. Like, I already pay APRA for my registration as a registered nurse, and I really wasn't sure, that's $185 a year, and HIMAA membership as an associate is $249, I think it was. I might have been $269. Anyway, close. And I really did stop and think, I don't know that I'll get that much. So, but after speaking to Cassie for about 15 minutes, and she was explaining to me, you get the usual access to the journals, you get reduced conference fees each year, you get to feedback. And one of the things that she mentioned is that they do quite often have task forces for specific issues, and if you're a member, you get to have the opportunity to participate. And I think, really, from my perspective, that's really what hooked me into being a member and to signing up as an associate member. So I did do my presentation yesterday afternoon. I was pleased to see that I reckon there was probably about 70 people in the room, because obviously they do different rooms for concurrent sessions. And it was pleasing to see that there was about 70 people in the room to hear my presentation. And Andrew from HIMAA spoke to me after, and it was such a great conversation. And HIMAA does recognise that there is, I guess, a gap, or with clinical documentation specialists being out there, and is a growing workforce, which HIMAA really, it's been on their radar, but they really haven't been able to do too much. I mean, clinical coding, I think, has really, they've done so much work around the clinical coders, And I think their next body of work potentially, hopefully, will be the clinical documentation specialist workforce. So I'll stay in contact with Andrew. He certainly has it on his radar, and he really does want to make some improvements and have a way forward for clinical documentation specialists. So it was a great conversation. I spoke to him just before I left today, and we'll stay in contact, and you never know. So really, for clinical documentation specialists to have a voice, I really encourage you to become a member of HIMAA. I really encourage you to think about presenting at the HIMAA conferences. You know, the only way we can make a difference and the only way we can have a voice is to get involved. And funnily enough, that's what Sally Ann Wiseman, who that was her message to the HIMS and the clinical coders in terms of their profession. You have to get involved, you know, to make a difference. You can't just sit back and think everyone else is going to do it. You need to get involved, and you need to be part of the solution, and definitely not part of the problem. So yes, so there you go, 3 days. It was well worth it. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, even though there wasn't, I couldn't find another clinician, clinical documentation specialist pretty much out there. Danielle from CDIA was probably the one. If more of you were there, please let me know in the comments. I'd be really keen to get your perspective of the conference, and also your thoughts on moving forward for CDI. Particularly clinicians, who at the moment we're a little bit out in the cold, doing our own things. So is that a problem? Personally, I think it is. I think we really do need to. We're looking to be a profession. We need to have some form of regulatory governance, or even if that's a self-regulation. But I think HIMAA is already there. HIMAA is already in this space, and I think it would be an advantageous move if clinician clinical documentation specialists took advantage of that and be part of HIMAA. So I encourage you to join HIMAA, have a voice. Let's see how far we can go and how we can help HIMAA as well to meet their goals. Because we as clinicians, we bring a bit of strength that HIMAA will be able to hopefully leverage off to meet their goals as well. So as always, be passionate, be innovative, take care and stay safe, and bye for now.